December 31st, 1983. A new year was just hours away. But in Nigeria, the dawn of 1984 wouldn't be marked by fireworks or celebration. Instead, it would begin with the echo of marching boots, gunfire, and the fall of a civilian government. This is the story of the 1983 military coup in Nigeria, a turning point that reshaped the nation's political landscape and marked the return of military rule after a brief democratic experience. To understand the 1983 coup, we must first look back. Nigeria had emerged from a brutal civil war in 1970. The war, fought between the federal government and the secessionist state of Biafra, left deep scars. But in the aftermath, the military held firm control under General Yakubu Gowon, promising eventual return to civilian rule. By 1979, after nearly 13 years of military rule, Nigeria transitioned to a civilian government under a new constitution modeled after the American presidential system. This period became known as the Second Republic.
I have spoken on the inaugural speech on the 1st day of October and laid stress on our desire and our resolve to work for African unity.
At the helm was President Shehu Shagari, a soft-spoken and diplomatic man representing the National Party of Nigeria, the NPN. Hopes were high, democracy had returned, but soon the challenges began to mount. Despite the optimism, Nigeria's Second Republic was troubled from the start. Corruption spread like wildfire. Public officials enriched themselves while basic infrastructure crumbled. Inflation soared, unemployment rose. The once booming oil economy, the lifeblood of Nigeria's revenue, faltered due to global oil price crashes in the early 1980s. Ethnic and regional tensions re-emerged. The 1983 general elections, Shagari's bid for a second term, were marred by widespread allegations of electoral fraud, violence, and vote rigging. Opposition parties cried foul, but the courts upheld the results. Shagari was declared the winner. The military, watching from the sidelines, grew restless. Ninth of December 31st, as Nigerians prepared to welcome the new year, a group of military officers led a swift and bloodless coup. Among them, Major General Muhammadu Buhari, a respected officer known for his discipline and anti-corruption stance. In coordinated strikes, key locations were seized: communication centers, radio stations, and government buildings. The Presidential Guard offered little resistance. By morning, the coup was complete. President Shehu Shagari was placed under house arrest. The Second Republic was over. Major General Muhammadu Buhari addressed the nation on January 1st, 1984.
The Nigerian armed forces fulfilled their promise to end 13 years of military rule in 1979 when they voluntarily handed over the reins of power to the civilians. The essentials of good government as seen by the people of this country were contained in the provisions of the suspended 1979 Constitution, particularly Chapter 11 thereof, which relates to the fundamental objectives and the directive principles of state policy. However, the Nigerian people watched helplessly while over the succeeding 4-year period of the first term of the defunct administration, most of government of the Federation failed to provide even the minimum of good government. The otherwise born economy of the first two fiscal years, 1979-1980 and 1980, was allowed to run down through mismanagement.
With those words, Nigeria was once again under military rule. General Buhari's regime promised to clean up the system. His government cracked down on corruption, arresting politicians and public officials. Many were tried by military tribunals and given lengthy sentences. The infamous War Against Indiscipline, or WAI, was launched to instill civic responsibility, punctuality, and public hygiene. But the regime was also criticized for harsh decrees, media censorship, and human rights violations. Domestically, many Nigerians were initially relieved. The civilian government had failed to meet expectations. The military, it seemed, would restore order. But not everyone welcomed the coup. Civil society organizations decried the return of authoritarianism. Abroad, reactions were mixed. Some Western nations expressed concern, while others quietly engaged with the new regime, mindful of Nigeria's oil reserves and regional importance. At the center of it all was General Muhammadu Buhari, a man shaped by discipline, military culture, and nationalistic ideals. But he wasn't the mastermind of the coup. Behind the scenes, other officers played pivotal roles. General Tunde Idiagbon, Buhari's deputy, became the regime's enforcer. Meanwhile, Ibrahim Babangida, the then chief of army staff, watched closely, a powerful figure whose own ambitions would later reshape Nigeria once again. The 1983 coup didn't usher in long-term stability. Just 20 months later, in August 1985, Buhari himself was overthrown by none other than General Babangida. It was a palace coup, bloodless but decisive. The cycle of coups and military governments would continue for another 14 years until the return to democracy in 1999. But the 1983 coup remains significant. It marked the end of Nigeria's Second Republic and exposed the fragility of civilian rule in a system plagued by corruption, weak institutions, and ethnic divisions. Looking back, what can we learn from the 1983 military coup? It reminds us that democracy, once attained, must be nurtured. That strong institutions, not just elections, are essential for stability. That the military, no matter how well-meaning, is not a substitute for democratic governance. Today, Nigeria continues its journey, complex, resilient, and full of promise. But the echoes of 1983 still linger, a reminder of the battles fought not just on the battlefield, but in the halls of power.